All right, yeah, I'm Matthew Banks, alcoholic. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for not leaving. That's nice. Some of these I never know where to go. Like, I make my plan and I ask God to direct me. And I have a lot of things I want to talk about, and then I might not talk about them at all. So I rely a little bit on inspiration. But, the whole theme of the weekend really is what now? Like, I'm sober, and it's like, now what, And I think the most important thing that I can bring you are my mistakes and my pain. The delusion that I got was when I got sober is like, I'm going to get so spiritual that I no longer have problems. If I get spiritual enough, nothing's ever going to bother me. I'm just going to be a picture of peace and serenity, and everything's going to be all right, and I'm just going to live on this, basically like a spiritual high 24/7, And it's moments like this when we have like a powerful moment and we're all sitting around the fire and somebody shares something and it just like, the chill goes around the room and it impacts you. Like, that's what I really want to embrace and like try to remember, because I'm going to have moments in my sobriety where like all that goes away. I completely forget about it, And so when I didn't share a lot about from age 15 to 17 last night, and I want to share a little bit more about it because it relates to a lot of what I'm going to try to talk about this weekend. And so when I was 15, and I got up in front of the church and I interrupted the sermon and told the congregation that people were trying to kill me, and it was absolutely horrific. I mean, my poor parents had no idea what to do. Just pure terror. I'd have drowned me in a lake, because I would have just been done. Like, I don't know how to deal with it. And my dad is a retired preacher, minister, whatever. And every day of my life growing up, my dad had an office where he did all his writing his sermons. He was also a teacher, so anytime he was doing his lesson plans or whatever, he'd be in there writing his lesson plan. But every single morning, if it was 5:30 to 6:30 in the morning, every time I walked by that office, my dad was doing his prayers and doing his meditation. And so I know a lot of you probably grew up with no dad or no mom or neither, and I don't have that experience. I was given a firm, very tangible, lesson of how to live my life, and I still was incapable. Lack of power is my dilemma. And so I can't blame I can't blame my alcoholism on any of my childhood, but so I'm giving this firm example, and so I walked by that office and I'd see my dad doing this prayer and meditation, and I was even more cooked than I might have even let on when I was from 15 to 17. For 2 years, I'm in and out of psychotic breaks, and I can remember I was sitting in my living room and I was with my mom, and I think people are out to get me. And I remember sitting in that living room and there was a hailstorm outside, and I was so psychotic and so delusional. I'd been up for so many days that I thought there were people out there that were tapping the window, trying to break the window to come in and murder my family. And no one could have told me otherwise, And I've just got pure terror, and I talked about playing golf, and I used to be really good, in high school. It did really look like maybe, I don't know that I'd have gone pro, but I definitely would have played college and, maybe been a club pro and all that stuff, And so when I was 15, I was number one on the golf team, and I beat all the seniors, and they hated me, And so when that psychosis started to come in, and people were starting to, I think people were trying to get me and stuff. My dad knew that the only place on earth where I felt at pure peace was on the golf course. So my dad took me out to play golf. And I'm out there having a psychotic break trying to play golf on this course. And on the golf course, I played on this goat ranch type course, and there were these concrete slabs in the fairway that would tell you the distance, and one of them, if you're 100 yards away, would be painted red. And, I thought that's where the helicopters were supposed to land and come get me. And I'm playing golf and I'm just freaking terrorized. And I was like, they were taking me to counselors and all kind of stuff, taking me to psychiatrists, and nobody had a clue what to do with me. And one of the biggest things that the counselor would say was look, you got to get them outside. You got to get them exercise. You cannot ignore life. Him staying in the bed and sleeping all day and just being a pure terror. That can't happen, So I had a golf tournament coming up, and so I'm freaking psychotic, and I'm going to play this golf tournament. I'm playing with this guy, and it was a group of 4. I'm playing with this guy, and he's got these red tinted glasses on, and I think he's the devil. And I'm playing golf with the devil, And so I'm playing in this tournament, and on the front 9, I shot even par because I was so terrified. I'd hit the ball, and I'd run in my cart, and then just drive off to the next place. Because this guy would just look at me through those glasses, and I could see his eyes, and he could see my soul, And so I shot even par on the front 9, and then I get to number 10. And number 10 goes this way, 11 this way, and 12 this way. And there were the 3 hardest holes on the course, so we called it the Bermuda Triangle. And so I shot even, and on number 10 I had a 6, number 11 I had a 6, number 12 I had a 6, which is 666. And I'm playing with the devil, and we get to hole number 13, which is an unlucky number, and I am just flipping out, dude. And I shot 47 on the back 9 and just completely tanked that tournament, and it was just bad, dude. It was just bad. And this is going on for 2 years, and because my dad was in prayer and meditation, because in prayer and meditation, I'm asking God how to deal with the things in my life, with the struggles of my life. And I guess it came to my dad in meditation, but I'm laying on the couch. I hadn't been outside in 2 weeks. I'm terrified, man. Terrified. Just pure terror. And my dad walks in the living room and he throws a tennis ball at me. And I was like, what? And I caught the tennis ball. And I threw it back at him, and he caught it, and he threw it back at me. And so now we're throwing the tennis ball back and forth. And I got up off the couch, and we're throwing this tennis ball back and forth. I haven't been outside in 2 weeks. And so while we're throwing this tennis ball, my dad just opens the door and he backs outside. And we're throwing that ball back and forth. And when I walked outside, I had a spiritual awakening. And I had a white light experience. And for the first time in months, I knew everything was going to be all right. And they say, once you've been touched by God, nothing else will do. And I had that experience when I was 15, but from that experience, that started to melt away. That experience, it melted away. That alone will not keep me sober. That alone will not keep me sane. And that started to wash away. But luckily, throughout my whole life, because of that experience, I knew that God was real. And I knew that there was something. But my problem was I could not connect. I was blocked. And I'm blocked by resentment. I'm blocked by fear. And I'm blocked by the way I treat other people. And so when I was 5 years sober, I don't remember, something like that. I went to a conference, and a lot of you know Sandy Beach. And I went to that conference, and I heard Sandy Beach talking. This was 3 weeks after his daughter had just been murdered. And he's speaking from the podium at a conference. And he's talking about forgiving the man that just murdered his daughter. And he's talking about he was able to forgive immediately. And because of the forgiveness, he did not experience a single ounce of pain. He was like, I experienced sadness and I experienced sorrow, but I did not have pain. And that didn't make sense to me, you know. And so, about a week later, after that conference, my dad took me out. He said, I need to take you out to dinner. I need to talk to you. I was like, all right. So we went out to dinner, and my dad said, I'm leaving the family. And, you know, I've started drinking, and I just need some space. And this guy is the guy that I grew up with that had shown me how to live. He was like the person I looked to for guidance. My dad had met some woman out in Texas. He ended up moving out to Texas. But when my dad had that conversation with me and he told me he was leaving the family, I sat there and I paused, and I don't know why, but Sandy Beach's voice went through my head. And the voice said, you can either forgive your dad right now and be free of pain, or you can hate him and be in a hell of a lot of pain. And God gave me that grace to make the decision to forgive my dad. God intervened. And I got up from that dinner and I gave my dad a hug, and I got back in my car and I just broke down, you know. And it was not pain, it was sadness. And I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do with this information. And I had the divine intervention that it's not about me, it's about my sister. When I was trying to invent this guitar, you know, and I ended up building this mold out of aluminum foil. And I went around the house and I got balloons and I got newspaper and olive oil and this green foam. My dad handed me a brick of green foam so I wouldn't hurt myself, you know. Like, well, let's make it all Nerf, you know. And so he gave that to me and I stuck it in the blender, you know, and I hit frappe, you know. I'm like trying to make this material to, like, you know, that nobody had ever thought of before. You know, this is after the aluminum foil. I got deeper and deeper and deeper, you know. And my parents had been up for days, and they're exhausted, you know, and they don't know what to do with me. And so they need some sleep, and my sister's 3 years older than me, you know. And so my sister was supposed to babysit me that night because I'm like a 250-pound 3-year-old, you know, that's lost his mind, and here I am in the kitchen putting all this stuff together and, you know, trying to build this guitar to change people's lives. And my sister watched her brother lose his mind. Like, she lost her brother that day, you know, and that screwed her up for a very long time, you know. And I would always pray, like, well, how am I supposed to make amends for that? I mean, I can tell her I was wrong and I'm sorry, and what do you want me to do to make it right? Which I did. You know, I pulled her aside when I was in Alabama and I was making the amends to my sister, and I told her how wrong I was and how sorry I was, and I have zero clue how to make this right, but can you tell me? And I was super active in AA, and my sister was like, well, you're doing a pretty good job. You know, you're doing a pretty good job. And so when my dad gave me that information, when he told me that information and I went out in the car and I broke down, you know, I called my sister to check on her. And finally, I'm able to be the brother that I'm supposed to be. And I did not care about my well-being at all. I cared about my sister's. And we were able to talk, and from that moment on, I've had a very close relationship with my sister, and we have a lot of struggles, and, you know, but we get through it together. And so after that, my dad moved off to Texas with some woman, you know, and left the family. He's drinking his brains out. And for 10 years, he just completely destroys everything in his path. I mean, it's horrible, man. It's horrible. My dad never drank my entire life, and he decides to drink when I'm 4 years sober. Let me give that a run. And so he starts drinking, and he just tears up everything in his path and just rips our family apart. And every time we would think, like, well, maybe we're not going to hear from him anymore, we'd get some more news of something he had done. And we would just be like, my God, like, we would just be crushed over and over and over. And I'm talking with Dave on a daily basis. I'm talking with Ephraim on a daily basis. And, I don't know what to do. I'd forgiven my dad, but every time he'd do something, it would just destroy the family. He'd go and just like set off a bomb in the family. Every time we'd start to heal and just screw everything up, And about 10 years after that, I don't know, these are all maybe the case. It was around 10 years after my dad just burning his life to the ground. My dad calls me. I hadn't talked to him in a couple years. And he says, I've got a drinking problem and I need to find a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was like, all right. And, I pointed him in the right direction, where to go to a meeting. And one of the things about a family member suffering from this disease is there's nothing I can do. Zero I can do about it. I got to let AA love my dad back to health. And so my dad did all right for a while. My dad went about 3, 4, 5 years. And he's still sober. He's still in AA. But he was acting out on some behaviors that I couldn't be a part of, man. So he's still going to AA as far as I know. And I've done a lot of prayer and I've done a lot of meditation, but I haven't talked to my dad in almost 2 years. If I can do anything at all when I'm here, is that nothing's perfect in my life. Zero is perfect. And dealing with resentment, like this business of resentment is infinitely grave. They're not kidding, man. And I was sponsoring this guy when I was I think it was my second sponsee. He was the first one that like stuck around. And he came into AA, and when he sat down, like he had a burn like from his neck all the way down his chest. It was burned off his back, like his hairline was, you could see where he'd been burned. He had hair growing over the top of it. So this guy comes in. I'm 22, 3, something like that. This guy's 37, And for whatever reason, he asked me to sponsor him. And when I'm sponsoring him, like, I was like, so tell me, like, what happened? What happened to your face and your everything? And he was like, well, I was in this street fight when I was in high school. And I beat up this guy's little brother. And his brother got mad and went to his dad's lab, like a science lab, and took sulfuric acid and he threw it in my face. And it burned him from his neck down, all down his back. Scarred him literally for life, right? He's in a burn center. He's having to get skin grafts. He was telling me these stories, how they had to cut skin off his ass and put it on his head, and they blow his head up real big for, just horrific. For 3.5 months, he's in that center, and so he's telling me this, and I'm getting mad. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like, Jesus Christ! Like, what are we gonna do? We gotta get this guy. And so, if there's ever like a justified resentment, here it is. And I knew from going through the work that this business of resentment is infinitely grave, and so that came to me, and I was like, look, man, if you don't deal with this resentment, like, you're going to drink again. There's no doubt about it. And he knew that intuitively, but how in the world are you supposed to get over a resentment like that? Because forgiveness for me has been a gift. God has given me the grace and taken the anger away from me. When I had that experience with my dad, it wasn't like, I was given this grace to make that decision, but like I don't have the power to do that. And so in the book, there's some real clear directions. And on the bottom of 66, it goes up to the top of 67. It says, we realize that people who wronged us were perhaps spiritually sick, though we did not like their symptoms and the way these disturb us. They, like ourselves, are sick too. And then it goes on to a prayer, and it says, we ask God to help us show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we cheerfully grant a sick friend. God save us from being angry. How can I be helpful to them? The only reason I can quote that is because I've read it 10,000 times. And in my sponsorship tree or whatever, with the guy that I went and stalked, that was one of the biggest reasons I wanted to find him, was because of the resentment part. But the way we would do it is when you get through the third column, now you got to start that prayer before you get to the fourth column. And every night, you got to say that prayer. And notice that the prayer's for me, not for them. Like, I'm asking God to help me show them tolerance, pity, and patience. I cheerfully grant a sick friend. And then we would also take the portion from the back where there's a story in the back about, giving them 3 things that I'd want more than anything. Ask God to, give them those things. And so we have to do that prayer every night until we can check it off. Like, have I forgiven them? And until you can check that name off, we're not moving on. We're asking God to remove that hate from us. So I told him, I was like, well, this is what I did, and I said these prayers, and so this is what you got to do. And I told him, and so for 3.5 months, this is a guess, it was a long time. He's doing it, he's like, I'm not getting anything out of this. Like, it's not working. And I was like, well, I'm calling my sponsor, like, dude, he's going to die. What are we supposed to do? Like, we got to move on. He's like, just trust the process. I'm like, all right. And so he's saying this prayer, and I remember he called me on a Sunday morning. He woke me up. He was going to church, and he said, you'll never believe what just happened to me. And I was like, what? He says, I was in the line at McDonald's ordering some food before I went off to church, and he said, I'm standing in line about to order, and I hear that guy's voice, and the guy's standing right behind him. He hasn't seen this guy in 21 years. The guy fled town when it happened. And he said he turned around, and his hand was out to shake the guy's hand. And he said, I'm glad to see you. Is it okay if I talk to you for a minute? Huh. And they went and they sat down in a booth in McDonald's. And the guy that I was sponsoring said to the guy, he said, I owe you an amend. He said, if I wouldn't have been treating your brother and if I wouldn't have beat the hell out of your brother, none of this would have happened. And he said, I also want you to know that I've forgiven you for everything that you did to me. And the guy that he was sitting with just broke down because she's been carrying this burden for 21 years. And my sponsee starts crying. And he called me, and when he called me, there was something different. He had been free of that pain. Fuck yeah. And that's the power of this stuff. If I'm willing to show up and I'm willing to do it, And I had a resentment on my list, and you know how you got some resentments where it's just like holier than thou type of thing. Like I just don't like the guy. I don't even really know why. Probably how he's a lot like me. And I had this one guy in mind, and he was the last name on the list, and I could not check him off. And I'm going through and I'm saying this prayer every night. And I was driving to a meeting, and I got a call. I didn't recognize the number, so I answered the phone, and it was like, hey man, this is David. It was that guy. I was like, oh great, how you doing, David? It's nice to hear from you. And he's like, are you still doing that AA thing? I was like, yeah. Why? He's like, I think I got a drinking problem and I need your help. And I was like, God, this is not the way I was hoping this would work out. I shut my eyes, and I was like able to muster up the courage to be like, well, you know what, David, how convenient for you. I'm on the way to a meeting right now. Maybe I'll come pick you up and I'll take you to this meeting, you know. So I picked David up and I took him to the meeting and I helped him find a sponsor, and I never ever saw David again. But that pain went away forever, you know. And the most important part of this stuff about this second surrender that we're going to talk about later in this what now experience is that the biggest thing that happens to me is I lose belief in step 2. Is because, you know, if Chris came in and he called me with something horrible that's happened, if he calls me and tells me about it, I've got zero doubt in my heart that God can take care of his problem. But I would imagine Chris might have a few questions. You know, I can always believe it for you. Because I've had these experiences. I've taken guys through. I've seen the light come on. I've seen some awakenings. It's been absolutely miraculous. And then I'm given a problem like my dad, and I'm like, are you sure? Like, I don't know if you can take care of this one, God. You know? And so that right now is one of my biggest things, is like bringing into prayer and bringing into meditation. Like, God, just take my dad. You know? Just take my dad. I don't know what to do about it. Who knows? Maybe after this I'll call him. I have no idea. You know? But it's one of those things of like reestablishing that trust that Ephraim was talking about. Reestablishing that trust that like God has got my back. You know? After the session this afternoon, we're going to write ourselves a postcard from God. Like, here's a postcard saying, you know what? It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. Because I lose sight of the fact that I'm okay. I still remember when I was, 10, 11, 12 months, something like that, and I'd been through the steps, and I'm like, the lights are finally starting to come on. And I pulled up to a stop sign. I'm on 6th and Farmer Street in Cleveland, Mississippi, and I just stopped, and I was like, you know what? I'm okay. And I've never been okay. I'm okay. And then, how do I get back to that? And the next session, I'm going to talk about my journey up to that point. I didn't talk anything about 7 years to 17. I've got 19 now. But at 17 years sober, I hit a bottom so bad I wanted to blow my head off. In sobriety, doing AA, sponsoring guys, and I want to kill myself. And it wasn't mental illness. It was spiritual depression, which looks a whole lot like clinical. So anyway, I'm going to give it to Ephraim and let him kick it off.
Thank you.
All right, my name is Ephraim, alcoholic. So the 12 and 12, I'm going to paraphrase, but the 12 and 12 says something about there will always be desires in a man that oppose the grace of God. And so there will always be this struggle with me where it's like, I know this is probably what I should do, but I don't want to do that. I'm doing this. And so there's always opposition. And so it's like, I'm hoping that, the guys in this room, I'm sure somebody in here is at a place where they know what they're supposed to do, but they're in opposition with God. There's the sticking point. It's like the sticking point. What am I willing to do? Am I willing to get in the wheelbarrow or am I not? And I was listening to him talk about the meeting. I need to tell you what happened with Moon. I need to tell you because it came. I was like, oh yeah, you should tell him. So you fast forward, like after that happened, like my life crashed. I was going to prison not too long after that. No bond, son being born, life, terror and madness. Anyway, so I'm going to meetings. I'm in my hometown. I'm working with Dave. I'm doing this AA thing. And I'm sitting in the meeting one night. And Dave has, I'm sitting beside him and he's passed me the chips to give out. You're going to give out the chips. Okay, I'll give out the chips. And at this meeting, they hugged. It drove me crazy. I don't like hugging. I'm not a hugger, man. I'm not a hugger. Don't hug me, please. It's uncomfortable. And it's like, man, I've gotten used to it today. But like in the beginning, I was like, oh, God, please don't touch me, please. And they're all like, come here, give me a hug. And then Dave would do he would go, long, uncomfortable hug. And it wouldn't let go. It was like, oh, I'd be squirming. And there was another guy in the meeting that when he hugged, he put his cheek against my, and I would feel this man scruff from a guy's cheek. Oh my God, I don't like it. So I'm sitting in the meeting one night, and we're doing the chips, and 5 minutes late into the meeting walks in Moon to the meeting, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what the hell? And I lean over to Dave. I've already given my inventory to Dave, so he knows the story. And I said, that's Moon. What do I do? And I'm like, I'm having visions of what I'd like to do. Baseball bat, meet him in the parking lot, bam, 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 give him my money, you know. I'm like having that going on. And Dave says, just wait. Just wait. You know, sit still, don't panic. And so we're going through the meeting, and it's the end of the meeting, and Moon is right across there, you know. And I'm like, man. And I'm fuming. And it's like, all right, Ephraim's going to give out the chips. And then here's it. My name's Ephraim, alcoholic. I like to give a 24-hour chip. Anybody? And then I say, 30-day chip. Moon stands up. Moon stands up. And I got to give Moon a 30-day chip and a hug. And Dave is going, that's what you do. You give him a hug. That's what. And Moon got that chip and left, and I've never seen him since. But I wanted to talk a little bit about, like Matthew was mentioning, resentments, and it's like these sticking points, and what am I willing to do? And when I went into prison, I had the baby mama Vanessa, my son. That was kind of a big deal going on with me. And when I went in there, I was like, you know, I don't know if y'all can relate, but I was like, that bitch. She won't take my calls, won't write me back, she's, you know, with this other, she done got married and won't let me see my kid. And I'm like resentful at a high level. I'm resentful. And I did the inventory process, and they're asking me to, you know, pray for her, and I'm gritting my teeth when I'm praying. And a lot of the stuff that I went over, you know, I would do the prayer exercise, and the resentments would be immediately gone. They didn't have power. They were instantly removed. But this one with Vanessa was like, it was just in me. I could not shake it, you know. And I just kept praying, and probably prayed for 18 months, 2 years, something like that. But as I would do it, I would start to remember. It's funny how my alcoholism, the alcoholic mind, it's perception. My perceptions throw it off. And so I had forgotten about leaving her in there with the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics she took the brunt of that raid. And I forgot about this one time where I had cut all the tires on her car so that she wouldn't leave the house. And I meant to come right back, but I got stuck on a 2-week run, and I didn't come back for 2 weeks. And we live way out in the country, and so she was stranded for 2 weeks, and I cut the tires, you know. And I forgot about that. And as I'm praying, you know, I start to remember the truth of, you know, her being big and pregnant, and we're walking on asphalt barefooted to the gas station up the street so that, you know, we could get a little bit of food. And I remember this so vividly. We're walking barefooted. She's big and pregnant. It's hot as hell. We're walking to that gas station, and I'm selling her on my plan. Don't worry, I'm about to get on my feet. Don't worry, I got it all worked out. I got this. I'm gonna talk to this guy. I'm gonna take care of it. And it's like, and I just dragged her through. And I eventually woke up to the idea that, you know, out of all the people that love me, she hung in there the longest. My parents had wrote me off. All my friends were over it. There was nobody left but her. And she took the brunt of that end, you know, the last days. I mean, she really got the brunt of that. And I would be in the, begging her, I'm going to change, I promise. This time will be different. Please let me back in the house. And she'd let me in, and I'd get her again. And it'd go over, and I'd say, please let me in the house, let me in the house. And I'd get in there, and I'd do it again, boom. And she finally got to the point where she just couldn't do it anymore. And to protect her own sanity, she's like, look, I can't. Like, we're done. Like, don't call, don't. And to this day, I don't have her address. I don't have her phone number. I don't know where she is, what she does. I have zero contact with her. And it was the same thing with my son. They were like, look, we see what you're doing, but we don't need you. Please stay away. And I had signed my rights away. I didn't have anything legal I could stand on. And so when I made it, I wrote her a letter. Dave said, write her a letter. So I wrote this great letter. It was about 10 pages of romance, excitement. It was good. I was probably going to get late, with this. But he had told me, don't send it until I read it. And so I took it to him. He tore it up, man. He tore up my letter, and he said, you get 5 sentences. Write out what you did, your mistake. Write out your plan to make it right. And so I'd written it out. He approved it, and I sent a small amount of money, something I could afford to try to pay child support. I didn't have any rights, but it was like, you need to contribute. And so she sent it back. She said, look, we don't want anything to do with you. You burned us enough. We don't trust it. And I went back to Dave, and he had suggested maybe send the money to his aunt. She had a sister, and the sister she would go to bat for me a little bit. And so she was in contact with me. And so I would send her money. And there were times when, 10 years into doing that, I still haven't seen him. I got zero contact. I'd ask the sister, look, I've been sober for 10 years. I'm doing all this, stuff. My life is good. I had met my wife and gotten married to her. We've got a great relationship. I got 4 kids with my wife. And it's like they just wasn't having it. And the sister would say, well, let me talk to her. I'll see what I can do. And then nothing would ever happen. And so there were times where I'd say, man, I need this money. I'm tired of doing this. I'm not sending it no more. For all I know, they're smoking crack with it. And they won't let me see my son. And there was one time where I text all that out in a message to the sister. And this is what she said. You haven't changed a bit. Man, like gut punch. You haven't changed a bit. She sent me a screenshot of a bank account that had all the money that I've been sending her. And she was like, I was planning on sending you this to show you. But since you brought it up, and I felt like that big. And here I am doing all this AA. But it's like these sticking points. It's like, I opposed the grace of God that day. And I felt that big. And then I said, you know what? Just send it. I'm sending it. I'm sorry. I'll send you more. I'm going to send more, And so I started doing that. And I kept doing that till when he was 18. When he was 18, I'm like, he's grown now, He's 18, I'm coming. I'm going to reach out to him directly. I'm tired of going through y'all. I started messaging him. No response. And I had justified in my head. I was like, you don't have to send the money past 18. Because at 18, But then I was like, you've been sending this money all this time and your life's getting really good. Maybe you need to send the money. It's not for him, it's for you. So every time I'd send the check, I'd send it on the 15th of the month. And every month on the 15th, it showed that I was willing. I still had the willingness. Are you willing to go to any length? I'm sending the money. And so I decided I'm going to do it till he's 21. I'm just going to continue to send it till he's 21. And I'm messaging him about every 3 months. I'll message him. I wrote him a letter, gave it to the sisters. Nothing. And I'm like, man, and he was about 20 years old, and they started selling cars. I heard he was selling cars on Facebook, and I would follow him on Facebook. I'd gotten a friend, and he had posted a Yukon Denali on there. It's 2024 Yukon Denali, and I just bought my wife one like 2 months before. And so I was like, I messaged him, and I was like, that Yukon Denali sure is nice. I just bought Clara one a couple months ago. And it came back. It said, "It is." That was the message. And I was like, "Oh my God, dude! I've got contact." And I was like, and it was like a girl. It was like, "Oh my God, I don't want to mess it up. How do I respond? I don't want to screw it up." And I was calling Matthews, like screenshotting it, sending it to people. What do I do? What do I do? And we started just this back and forth about the car dealership, and then that turned into, kind of like everyday check-ins. And then we went through this. I had some guys around me, guys that I sponsored close to me, and they're like, "Why don't you call him?" I don't even have his phone number. This is all through like Messenger. I'm scared to ask him for his number. I'm like, I don't want to overstep my bounds. It's going so good. Just the superficial conversation is good enough. And I think we had gone to that conference in Indiana where I met Chris and Jeremy, and I just started communicating with him, but I was scared to push it, And he would ask questions like, "So where were you?" That's really hard through text. It's complicated. We'll explain in an interview. It's like, and I would type out these long things, but it was like, delete, 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 delete. It was just really, really hard. And I would do the best I can. Don't bring up his mama. Don't talk about his mama at all, And I guess we did that for about 18 months, this back and forth. And this past May, he was living in Tennessee, about 9 hours from where I live. And I was like, screw it. I'm just going to ask him. And I messaged him, can I come to see you? I want to sit down with you face to face and talk to you. Would you be open to that? That's what I said. And I was running at the time, and he was running. We had talked a little bit about that. So I was like, maybe we can run together. And I didn't think he's 21 years old. I'm almost 50. Like, we're going to run together in the mountains, Tennessee mountains. I'm like, but I stepped out there on it, I'm like, whatever. And he agreed to it. And that's what, so I made this trip, and I went up there to meet him for the first time in May. And it was, it's like, how do you make amends for that? I signed my rights away in sobriety. I did that. I made it in one of these fits of like being mad, and I went to court. They were trying to make me pay child support, and I went to court, and I was trying to tell the judge I was in recovery. I'm an AA guy. I'm in recovery. I'm about to go back to college, and I need you to reduce that child support so I can go back to college and do something with my life. And the judge raised it. He raised it, and he said, what you can't afford to go into back child support, when you get out of college making all that money, you'll be able to pay it all back. And then I got mad, and I said, I'll show you. I signed my rights away. When I did that sealed the deal on that relationship. So anyway, I had all that going, and I was going up there to see him first time, and I was laying in the hotel and just mind going. Now I'm praying. I'm going to 2 meetings a day. I'm talking to people. I'm doing all the AA I can do. Meditation. I'm reading on Awake. I'm doing everything I can possibly do, and it's still on me. And that night in the hotel room, it was on me. And what's it going to be like? You're just nervous, stomach and all that. And I hit that whisper hit. And it said, "You remember in prison, you asked me to take care of him. Tomorrow, I'm going to show you how I did." And I went to sleep. Peace. I went to see him the next day. And it was amazing. Like, amazing experience. He's about this tall. I guess meth does that to your sperm. I don't know. All you meth guys, I'm rooting for you, But he wanted to show me. I said, "How are you living? Show me how your life is." That's how I went in. I went in there not trying to defend myself or explain anything. It was more like, "How are you living? I want to show me where you work. Show me where you're living." he introduced me to his girlfriend's parents, and I just got to do that. Now we did ride around and we got into some discussion about, it was like, where you been, what you doing, all that, and I tried to explain it the best I could, and told him that anything, like I earned it. Your mom don't talk to me, I earned that. It's good. She does that for protection, and but. Because we reconciled, me and him, and once I met him face to face, I was able to get his phone number. And so now we talk every day. Every day. Matter of fact, on the way to this retreat, I sent him a message and I said, look, I'm gonna be off grid for a little while. And he said, off grid, I love it. Because he's like me, but without the alcoholism and the drugs. Super intense, go-getter. Like we're a lot alike. It's kind of eerie. Because I didn't raise him, and he turned out great, So I got that going. I want to touch on this too. I was 13 years sober. I built a business for a guy, and successful business. I didn't know what I was doing. I would call Dave, my sponsor. I say, man, I don't know how to build a business, and he'd tell me things like go to meetings. And I'm like, dude, I just told you I'm trying to build a business here. I don't know what I'm doing. I need to be working 12 hours a day. And he'd say, you're right. Go to the noon meeting and the night meeting. And I'm like, what are you talking? You're not catching it, bro. I need to be building this empire. And what I found is as I was going to the noon meeting and the night meetings, I was meeting 40, 50 people at a time twice a day. And so I was coming into contact with 100 people a day. You can't cold call that many people, And so what happened was that business exploded. Not because I went to AA trying to sell work, but just because contacts, connections. I'd wear my uniform every day, and they'd be like the tree guy out here. It's like, oh, you do trees, And it would just, so the business exploded. It was super successful. 8 years in, I started to do a little side work for baby number 3, so I didn't have health insurance. And I started doing a little side work. I had a manager go around me to the boss. Fast forward, I get fired. And in a matter of 5 minutes, I didn't have a job. I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a truck. I was unemployed with 3 kids. And they were charging me with embezzlement, a criminal offense. And I'm 13 years sober. I just spoke at the home group meeting a month before where everybody's like, oh, you're so spiritual. You really affected me with your talk. And now I'm like a month later, I'm getting charged with embezzlement. I'm going back. I'm hiring a criminal attorney. I got nothing. And I was rocked. It was like being hit with a 2x4 in sobriety. Doing everything I'm supposed to do. And I went into this like depression, like Matthew was talking about, sober, doing all the things. I'm waking up in the morning to do prayer and meditation. I'm reading Job. I'm reading Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. It's about a Jewish psychologist in a concentration camp. And I'm reading that book and I'm like, I'm in a concentration camp. It's like my world is like crashing. And I was doing prayer meditation. This went on for a couple of months. Because I got fired, I started a business real quickly. I just went out there and I had people coming to my rescue. Guys that I'd worked for were like, hey man, tell us what you need. Here's a check. Don't worry. I got you an attorney right here. I'll pay for it. And, people that I knew were coming and they were helping me. And I couldn't see it at the time, but it was like, it was going to be one of the greatest things that ever happened to me. But it came in the form of like being slapped with a 2x4. And the guy that fired me, we got into the criminal charges got dropped. There was none of that. But then they started suing me. They sued me. They sued my wife. They sued the business we created. And I was in litigation with a national company. It was pretty ugly. I was trying to start this business. I'm reading Job. It's like just a shit show, And I'm going to AA every day. I'm going to lunch. I'm going at night. I'm sponsoring guys. Matter of fact, I picked up this guy, Corbin, and I stuck him in my pocket, dude. Every day we were together. Every day. That dude saved my life. And I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew what I needed to do. You need to make amends to the boss. I ain't doing it. The sticking point. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. You know, screw that dude. You know, he did me wrong. He did me bad. They're suing me. You know, like all of that. And I was at the kitchen sink one night, and you know, my family's over here. I can hear the kids playing in the living room. My wife's over there, and everybody's laughter, and it's a good home. And I'm at the kitchen sink, and I'm washing dishes, and I'm thinking about sniper rifle, army crawling through the woods and assassinating this dude's whole family. And this is my mind goes, you do good in prison. You like it there, you know. It ain't nothing for you to go back, you know. And that's when it kind of clicked. Like, what are you doing, man? What are you talking about? You can't go back in there. You don't live like that. You're gonna have to make amends. So it basically got to the point where either you're gonna make the amends or you're gonna drink. Those are your choices. God is or He isn't. What's your choice to be? Some of y'all might have something like that going on right now. It's up to me. I got to make the choice. I called my attorney. I said, look, I know this guy. We went to Disney World with our families. We were close. We were buddies. Set up a meeting with him and me and our two attorneys present. I'm gonna fix it. I'm gonna make amends. I wrote out an amends. They basically said, I love you and there's nothing you can do about that. You know, here's where I got out of line. I went off track, and I'm sorry, you know. And so I sat down with him face to face, and that's what I did. I love you. There's nothing you can do about that. And it kind of went sideways for a minute. The attorneys had to step in. It's good to have your attorneys if you're in something like that, because they were like, look, you guys got to agree to disagree. Let's just move forward. And we ended up dropping the lawsuits, you know, all that stuff. We ended up killing that. And I signed a non-compete, 12-month non-compete. And what I did was I said, look, I'm going to give you 24 months. I'm going to double the non-compete. And I'm not going to mess with employees or anything. I'm going to go to work. I'm a tradesman. This is my trade. I'm going to go to work. You can't stop me from that. And that's what we agreed to. And I walked out of that meeting free of that. And I was driving home. It was about a 30-minute drive, and the attorney called, and they said they want the 24 months to start from today. Now, I had already been through a season of litigation. I'm in the lawn care business, so I'd have missed one season already. And now he's trying to get me for 2 more seasons. I'm like, no. And it came back, the character defect. I'm like, screw that dude. I'll take it to Supreme Court, you know. But they were like, no. It starts from the day that you got fired. Okay, and so we agreed to that. And I got free. And I'm not saying me and this guy are friends, but I walked the earth a free man because I was willing to do that. And that's what it needs to be. Another one real quick, sticking point. I'm talking to the ones who know their sticking point right now. Okay? It could be hitting your knees in the morning. It could be some kind of amends that needs to be finished. It could be doing something that I'm doing in the dark that I shouldn't be doing. If there's a sticking point, don't tie God's hands by not going through with it. I used to not hit my knees in the morning. Okay, here, I'm going to say this and shut up. I used to not hit my knees in the morning. I'd say, look, I'm in conscious contact all day long. I don't need to hit my knees. I talk to God all day, you know. And every time I go to the meeting, there'd be old timers going, every morning I roll out of bed, I hit my knees, thank God for one more day. And I'd be in the meeting going, those poor guys. Those poor guys got to hit their knees to get connected. Not me. Not me. I wake up, I'm praying in the shower. I pray on the way to work, you know. And that little whisper said, you run the show. I said, no, I don't. I'm doing AA. I'm in my head having the conversation. You know? I'm doing AA. Got a sponsor. I'm working steps. I'm doing all the stuff. And then the little whisper says, even in your prayer life, you call the shots. And it was like, it hit me. Man, how crazy is that? I have 0 prayer training. And even in my prayer life, I want to call the shots. After that, I started hitting my knees every day. Hitting my knees every day. When that stuff was going on with my boss and I was doing all that litigation, I was struggling. I had a guy say, I I said, man, I'm struggling. 13 years sober. And he said, do you ever read On Awakening? I said, yeah, I've read it. I read it with guys all the time. He said, yeah, but do you read it in the morning? On Awakening. I said, well, I don't read it every morning. I don't do. And he said, well, do you believe AA works? I said, yeah, I believe it'll work. And he said, well, if you believed AA works, then why don't you read that in the morning? And I was like, that is a good point. Maybe I should. And so the next day I start reading On Awakening. God direct my thinking, blah, 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 blah. And I got to that part that says, we relax, we take it easy, we don't struggle. And it was like, mind blown. I was like, when did they put that in here? When did they put that in here? But relax, take it easy. We don't struggle. I'm along for the ride. God is orchestrating the life. Turn it over to God. Do the things I'm supposed to do. My life gets better. That's it. I'm going to close with that. Thanks.
All right, we're gonna break for lunch. We're gonna first a picture, and don't forget about the Ask It basket. Please write questions in there. And where do you want to go, Chris, for the picture?
Where do y'all?
Right out back.
I love that back scene, man. I'm obsessed with out there.
Right out back.
I'm cold.